Hey guys, I'm Sai, and welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. On the channel, we got shows, interviews, content, and all sorts of subjects from wrestling, mental health, films, TV, conspiracy theories, and much, much more. Football, including a couple of unique and exclusive shows of our own. And yes, we are doing for the first time. This is our wrestling series, which is called Keepin It Real. As you will notice, I have a different co-host today. We were hoping Andrew was going to be with us as well, but unfortunately, he's grinding away with the old wrestling interviews, so he wasn't free. But he'll be back next week, no doubt. So we're going to talk about various things, but I'll just introduce my co-host, my guest, whatever you'd like to call him, top guy, and that is TalkSPORT U.S. Editor, also the host of TalkSPORT U.S Wrestling Show, which is TalkWRESTLE. Mr. Alex McCarthy, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me by your side tonight.
It's cool, isn't it? We've done a few shows now, haven't we, together? But first live one talking about the wrestling, like I do the football, and obviously every week, and that's been going nicely, spiffingly, as they say. But
as they all say, yeah.
As they say, yeah. Well, will the wrestling one go as smoothly as yet to be decided? But yeah, unfortunately, we're going to start with a not very nice subject. Obviously, at the start of the show, we just ran that graphic, which was in tribute to Hana Kimura, who is a Japanese wrestler who sadly passed away. I think it was last weekend after some torrential, constant cyberbullying, abuse, death threats, all sorts of just terrible stuff sent to her because she was on a reality TV show called Terrace House, which is on Netflix in this country, I think, and then it's also on TV in Japan, I believe. Look, it's a tragic situation. She's like, I think she's 20. She was 22. So talented. It's real special wrestler, and it's just very sad situation. I find it real depressing. Like people talk about mental health a lot. I talk about mental health a lot on various shows. And look, just because you're behind the computer screen doesn't mean that you can just say whatever the hell you want. Just think about what you tweet, what you post on social media. There's always a human being on the other end, and that person has got a family, has got friends, and you don't know what's going on with them at any given time. And I just think, as a human race, we need to be better and think about what we're doing. And it's not even like I see a lot of people saying hashtag be kind. I say hashtag just don't be a dick, basically, and just be nice to people. But also, actually, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to leave it at that. But yeah, just a sad situation, mate, all round.
Yeah, it was awful. Of course, I had to open my show in similarly somber circumstances last Sunday, which we were fresh off the news at that point, and man, 22 years old, pushed to that point, and she had so much going for her. To feel that trapped and low that she had to do that is just staggering. And I mean, the fact that it happened during Mental Health Awareness Week is even more harrowing. And I just, I conduct myself a certain way on Twitter that I hope attracts like-minded people, good eggs, for want of a better term. And it's just to be nice and, wherever possible, be kind. It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. That's always been something I like to try and live by. It doesn't, and that's got nothing to do with status either. It's just generally how you carry yourself. So there's no need for all these toxic trolling. And I guess that only applies to some of these people that hide behind different profile pictures and anonymity and all of this stuff. But it really is tiresome at this point, and it's shown how hard that stuff can hit, man. I don't think people really take into consideration how literal people will take things. Like, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of this side, but even for me, like if I get, I might report something or post an interview or whatever, and somebody will reply, and it's all fun and games to a point, and whatever. But when people get personal with you, you do take it with you. And when you look at the level that Hana Kimura was getting it,
unbelievable, mate.
It just goes to show, honestly, your people need to be more considerate. And I hope that the people who say all of these things, as you mentioned, the hashtags and the messages on social media saying, let's be kinder to each other. Well, I hope that people stay by that. And I hope that they are true to their words and they carry themselves in a way that inspires other people to do so. I know that I can proudly say that is how I carry myself, and I intend to do so moving forward. There's no reason that we can't disagree or have differing opinions, but let's just be, respectful.
Yeah, spot on, mate. I don't know whether it's just because I was looking at certain things this week on Twitter and I just happened to come across it, but I saw more people like sending death threats or like just generally being real toxic than I've ever seen before. And sadly, a large portion of what I saw was coming from wrestling fans, which is real sad because the wrestling community as a whole, it's really like quite a fun and cool place to get involved in and speak to people about different things, different companies. There's so much wrestling around that's different that there's just you can really talk to people and enjoy it and get involved. But equally, there's certain portions of it which are just unbelievable. And just you said there, if I'd ever come across it, I haven't really come across it from a personal point of view. However, so I announced last Monday on the football show that I'm cutting my hair and I'm donating it, and I'm also hoping to raise some money for mental health charity Mind. So my hair's down here somewhere; it's like 17 inches or something. So good thing, you'd think. A lot of people have donated. I've already raised more than what I want, and I'm hoping by Tuesday to raise a bit more. Great. So I said, I think it was Wednesday, for every 50 quid I raise from now, I'll put up a stupid video using my green screen and doing something ridiculous with my long hair. So I did. I posted something this morning or lunchtime, which was basically me in front of a waterfall, being stupid with my hair, just flicking it about to Bobby Roode's Glorious theme. And, just messing about and just saying thanks to people for donating, basically. And someone DM'd me something not very nice. And I was just like, whatever. Just didn't bother me. But equally, I thought, that person is well aware of everything which has happened, like in the last week or so. And literally, the thing I'm doing is to raise money for a mental health charity.
I remember Sean Rossap doing, when he cut his hair off, for some reason people were giving him rubbish too. It's just, you think, even if you thought that, which is weird that you would, but even if you did have a feeling like that, like, just why say it? Like, and that's another thing I was saying the other day. Like, if you don't get on with someone, I see opinions all the time on Twitter that I think, like, what's that about? Or why is someone being like that? But I don't engage with all of them because I just, you basically, and I'm not. It's not to say don't challenge people, because you should in a certain right instance, right? But I mean, on Twitter, all you're going to do is really give them what they want. You're not going to change mine. You're not going to, you have to really pick your fights. And I always think there's some occasions where if you've got nothing good to say, then just don't say anything at all. And that's honestly something I try and live by, and then it limits the toxicity and the types of people you get into these kind of scrambles with. Like, you look at the Ryan Satin and JD from New York. Did you see all this?
Yeah,
right?
Hell yeah.
So this is all a couple of days after the Hana Kimura thing as well. And that JD from New York was saying things like that, I hope everyone is going to practice what they preach on this hate stuff. He's the worst, man. Like, that guy, from what I've seen, he's just like a beacon of negativity. He basically makes a living from crapping on wrestling. Yeah. I rarely see him having anything good to say. I don't know the guy, so I don't want to, again, I'm not going to go too deep into this. But all I've seen are negative takes, and it's fine if that's his thing. But then that video came out that he was getting more personal, and he basically likened Alexa Bliss's in-ring ability to what she would be like in the bedroom, right? Which and then people were trying to like defend it, and there was just this whole vicious cycle. I was like, what is going on? Like, people were just like, yeah, but he was talking about the character, so it doesn't really matter. What? Of course it does. Like, she was offended. But,
yeah.
It's I don't know how people can seriously sit there and try and justify it. But anyway, so of course this whole thing went back and forth between him and Ryan, and I actually inboxed Ryan and I said, mate, like you're almost feeding him. Like, he was feeding when wrestlers were like tweeting him saying how ridiculous what he did was. He was just getting a kick out of quote retweeting them and arguing with them, and I was like, you're not gonna, it needed to be said because the guy is
bang out of order, but
at the same time, I think there has to be a line drawn, and I for one feel like there has to come a point where you want to stay above that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's don't get me wrong, it's a tough line, but at the same time, a guy like that, JD from New York, that is kind of what those people live for. And honestly, I'd hate to be like that.
Yeah, I think the other side of that, however, like, I agree with you. I agree with everything you said. I thought what he said was bang out of order. There was no need for it. The weird thing is, like, a couple of years ago, I used to watch some of his stuff and I used to find him quite entertaining, but he's almost got caught up in his own negativity. So you very rarely hear him say anything positive about WWE. It's like he's like just caught in this like cycle of negativity.
That's become like a niche, because look at Cornette as well. Like, and I get it. Cornette's got like this dated history in the business, and he sees things certain ways. Like, cool. And I respect Jim Cornette to a degree, right, for like contributions to the business and stuff. But man, the way he like, and what he does on his podcast, the way he goes about bashing things, I just think, and the way he does it though is so like inflammatory, and I just think, what? But again, there'll be fans of those people who find it entertaining that will then defend the content of it, and that's where it gets grey. And I just think you're missing the point.
Yeah, I think like for me with Jim Cornette is like I kind of lost respect for him when he started using like racist and homophobic kind of insults or terms to get his point across. And I was like, if you're being negative, that's one thing. But if you're using stuff like that as the way to then further that negativity, that's kind of me done. And I don't listen to any of his stuff. However, there is a flip side to the JD thing. JD did apologize. Now, whether you believe his apology to be genuine, I did see the clip of his apology, and I do believe that it was genuine. Like, he seemed genuine. Now, I don't know. He could be laughing his socks off, behind the camera.
I only saw how he kind of went about engaging on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, the apology came after that.
Okay.
So then he apologized. Now, the thing which I've got a problem with is, after all this, someone doxed him, and his parents were getting phone calls and death threats and all this sorts of stuff. Now, to me, these same people who were having a go at him rightly for cyberbullying, for saying stuff which is sexist and out of order and negative and all those things that we just discussed, completely right. But those same people, some of them, not all of them, have then taken it upon themselves to put his address or his parents' address out there and phone his parents. It's got nothing to do with them.
No, don't get me wrong. That's way too far. And that's the thing, you got to think about that as well. And this is where it gets really tough. So someone like Alexa Bliss, this is what I saw that JD was crying about. He was like, oh, you set your fans on me. Well, she didn't set her fans on him. Like, she's well within her rights to kind of answer back. If he's going to publicly say things like that about her, it's not her fault that she has a mass following, right? Like, what was she meant to do? Like, put an asterisk before every statement and say, oh, but don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he should bear that in mind before he attacks people of that standing, to be quite frank. But it's not justifying either end of it. Like, do you know what I mean? And I'm sure Alexa Bliss, although I can't speak for her, but I'm fairly sure she wouldn't have wanted that either. So
I think she put up a post saying, it's like, I can't remember what it was, something like "be kind," and basically sort of tried to tell people to
not do it. But I mean, that's what I mean. Obviously, it's the whole cycle, right? We could be all day and go, that's wrong, and this shouldn't have happened, and but it all starts with that video that you put up.
Yeah,
to be honest.
It's sexist, it's rude, and last thing I'll sort of say on this, or Gaz just says there in the comments, he says negativity breeds negativity, and that is completely true.
Absolutely.
Which is why I generally try and stay away from, like, I won't get into these kind of negative Twitter spats and arguments, even if I see someone saying something outrageous or whatever. I just think, what's the benefits of me replying and calling them out?
Darkness can't drive out darkness. Only light can do that. There you go. Martin Luther King, I think that was. And it's just like you said, if you go around in circles on Twitter, if you do that, I see guys like David Bixenspan, Jonathan Snowden, all guys in the wrestling business, and they love an argument. They love it. Like, you can just see it in the. I'm not really that way inclined, to be honest, and I don't really see how that helps. But as long as you do it in a productive way, I guess, and a respectful way, I think it's okay. It's just people of this trolling and death threats is like another conversation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course it is. It's like another level, and I just think that even after someone has tragically died, people still within days are doing the same stuff, and I just can't get my head around it at all.
Tangent, but like, you look at what's going on in America now in Minneapolis, and it's that George Floyd, I believe that was his name, died, and it's like, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like, that's been happening in America for a long time now, and what's really going to change it? And that's kind of how it feels with online, and people committing suicide and mental health, and it's like, Hana Kimura is not the first, but she probably won't be the last, which is really, really, really sad. Like, because as far as online goes, and especially Twitter, we're no closer to figuring out how to stop this, how to make people more accountable for their words. And until we do, I think people should have to provide some kind of proof to get on social media. There has to be some sort of way, like, I don't know, when you're a kid and you used to want to, well, I say you when you're a kid, but you'd want to sign up with the bookmakers and you'd have to provide some sort of ID for an online account. Like, it should be like that for Twitter. You should be able to be held accountable for what you say.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, if you said something, if you threatened like someone with death, or you said something racist or whatever in person, you'd get into trouble for it, whether it's with the police or someone clocking you around the mouth or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
there's consequences to it, and I'd feel like people don't realize or don't think or don't care about the consequences because they're behind the screen.
I said that people say things on Twitter that they would never say to you in the flesh. That's half the problem.
Yeah, bang on. So yeah, my hashtag is just don't be a dick, and that's all I will end it on. So last weekend, mate, we had Double or Nothing, which was a welcome return to pay-per-views. I think I was in maybe not the minority, but I didn't really enjoy Money in the Bank that much. There was aspects of it which I enjoyed, but I wasn't. I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to enjoy it more than I did, but it wasn't terrible. But I was looking forward to this pay-per-view Double or Nothing. There was about 3 or 4 matches that I was really up for, and I thought it was a pretty good show overall. We're not going to go through it like blow by blow, but we'll kind of go through each match. But what did you think of overall as a show?
Well, first of all, on Money in the Bank, even though I probably think when you weigh everything up, it's probably my second least favourite cinematic. I think Gargano Ciampa was probably my least favourite. And it's not that it's bad. It's just, apart from the ending, I didn't really dig it. Boneyard's probably the best with Firefly, behind it. and we'll get on to Stadium Stampede. I'd put that right alongside those two. But I thought Money in the Bank was enjoyable for what it was, if that makes sense. Like I don't think it was bad.
No.
The show itself, like Drew and Seth had a banger. It was a good show, is what I would call it, a good show. But I thought Double or Nothing was a great show. As you said, I felt there were maybe 4 matches. I want the Casino Ladder, Cody and Lance, Moxley and Brody Lee, and then of course Stadium Stampede. They were the 4 that I looked at and I thought, okay, I've got big hopes here. MJF and Jungle Boy, they definitely prove something in their one-on-one match. MJF's a great talker, but now people are starting to see actually the work is there too. Jungle Boy proving that he's not just some little sidekick in a faction. And when you speak to Tony Khan, he's got such high hopes for both of them. MJF's kind of the obvious one to a lot of the internet community, but he was just raining down praise on them as if they were like Steamboat Savage. That was the comparisons being made, and maybe even Triple H Rock in the kind of way they'll be generational rivals. I thought Brian Cage as the ladder match winner was a cool surprise. He's a big guy with a lot of potential that unless you've watched Impact and maybe a bit of Lucha Underground, you're not going to be that familiar with. So kind of a shiny new toy to a lot of fans. He's got potential to do things. I thought Brody Lee made a very good impression in his first main event slot, right? His first world title match on a big stage. I just think it might have been, you could have said it was too soon for him to be in a world title match with Jon Moxley, but at the same time, on a 3-week build, I thought the match was a banger. As far as a world title match goes, brutal, hard hitting, a lot of action. I liked it. But for me, the Stadium Stampede, I found it wildly entertaining. Apparently it took him 12 hours to shoot. 12 hours. But there were so many, good spots in there. And I must admit, I'll address it while we're on it. On reflection, like maybe it wasn't a great idea to be dunking Matt Hardy underwater, but in light of Shad Gaspard passing. But really, apart from the fact that water is in the mix, it's not. I mean, that's really the only correlation, isn't it? Like, it's not the sea, it's not swimming pool, he's not, being dunked by. Yeah, I get it. It's not a great taste, but it's clear that they were linking it to the Lake of Reincarnation. And,
which is an ongoing thing, isn't it, for the last years?
It's obvious that is what it was for. So, I think to read too much into that is looking for a reason to be upset, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, but overall, I just thought it was great. Loved the bar scene with Hangman and the guys, and Sammy Guevara continues to be amazing. So, I think I just saw it pop up there that they said Stadium Stampede was great. But yeah, like they said, man, I just feel AEW have to keep knocking these pay-per-views out the park, and they at the moment they're doing it. I mean, Revolution was great, this was great, so then long may it continue.
So first of all, on last week's show with Andrew, we speculated on who we thought the to be announced guy was for the ladder match. I said Brian Cage. Thank you. And so I'll take credit for that massively. But Brian Cage is different to everything they've got. He's different to most people, in fairness, the size of him. But he's completely different to what AEW has, which is good. My only problem with the Brody Lee thing is I wouldn't have been having him lose so soon, which is why I wouldn't have put him in the title match unless you were going to put the title on him as a kind of shot.
Has it hurt him that much?
Maybe not, but I think what they do with him next now is vastly more important than it would have been if they had just had him in a match with, I don't know, like just a sort of a big mid-card name or someone and beat
Daniels or something like that would have been cool. Yeah.
If they'd had a banger and a really good match, and he'd won convincingly, they could have kept building him up. Whereas now, if he has another big match and they pick the wrong opponent and they don't want to beat that opponent and he loses again, you could very quickly get the kind of Luke Harper and Brody Lee comparisons, which they don't want. However, it is what it is. I thought it was a great match. I enjoyed all of the show. There wasn't anything which I hated. I did really enjoy Stadium Stampede. I didn't have a problem with anything. One of the reasons I didn't enjoy the Money in the Bank thing, I felt like they leaned a little bit too much into the comedy, which is weird because, as everyone knows, I thought the Firefly Funhouse was absolute genius, which was full of comedic bits. However, I would argue that even the bits which were a bit more comedy sort of centric, where Cena in the NWO and stuff like this, it's, if you break down all the match and all the little callbacks and stuff, that's what made it good, was the kind of callbacks to everything which has been gone on with Bray Wyatt. Boneyard match was obviously just really cool. It was like a mini film and like a culmination of a film, at the end in the action film or whatever. The Gargano Ciampa one, I agree. It was all right. I didn't hate it. It just was. I feel like the Boneyard and Firefly Funhouse set the WWE's bar so high for this type of match, and because they were both over the same weekend, I always felt like the next one they did, they may struggle to hit that kind of level. And maybe you could argue they did, but I would also argue that all the cinematic matches we've seen during this period now, since lockdown, if you like, I think they've all been good to great. So, I think most wrestling fans would take that, especially considering most of them have come from the WWE, which sometimes we don't always, they don't hit the mark with that sort of stuff.
I think there's two things there. Like, when you look at the Firefly Funhouse, I agree. I thought that was just absolute genius, and it was a story though. Like, it was tied together so well, and that a lot of that was from the mind of Bray Wyatt, and Cena obviously playing his role in that too, and all of those guys that contribute to that. Jeremy Barash and all of those lot, right? The Money in the Bank. I feel almost bad saying this. It feels more like a Vince production than the NXT crew who kind of did. We know they did the Boneyard match and helped with the Firefly Funhouse because Triple H said that Vince basically just directed it to him. Money in the Bank, of course, Vince is involved in it. It's a WWE pay-per-view, and for what it's worth, the Vince scene is pretty good.
It was funny, wasn't it?
I mean, the jokes, the humor felt more like him. Food fights. Heyman's there, and Bruce Pritchard's in the toilet for some obscure reason. Well, brother love. That felt it just felt more like that, and I feel like AEW do humor better than Vince at this point. So if that's what you're looking for out of a match, you're more likely to be rewarded with that.
Yeah.
And I also think the cinematic matches, they probably lend themselves more. The whole point they're cinematic is that you can't have the fans. So you're doing things that you can't do in a ring, right? Basically, is the premise. So having Gargano and Ciampa in a ring, not really amazing, is it? Right. So then you look at the Firefly Funhouse and the Boneyard, and they've got supernatural elements, of Bray Wyatt and Undertaker, and you can only do that in those matches for them, which actually enhances their character. Now, Stadium Stampede, the only way you can do that match, because it's such a big stadium, is the way they did it, cinematic-wise. If you tried to do it live, you'd miss everything, right? So, again, it makes sense. But if you're trying to have these cinematic matches where it is essentially a match, then it's not going to work as well. And the thing with the Money in the Bank, the whole concept of getting up through the building, I liked it, kind of both matches together, and the premise of getting to the top, but I just don't know. I don't know how well it was executed when it got to the top. Is another point. Like I don't know. I don't know what I guess what I'm trying to say is the humor in the match although I didn't mind it, I was entertained. If we're looking against what else has happened, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So I liked all cinematic matches, but I just don't know. I don't know if they've lived up to the bar the point that you made. The original bar is so high. I feel like the Stadium Stampede is the closest we've come to it since that inaugural weekend.
Yeah, I think so. So Christian says there he liked the cinematic matches. He liked Money in the Bank best, and I think that goes to show like it's all subjective, isn't it? It's like it's what you
like them. It's just a case of how much.
So I put a post up just on my Facebook there in the comments. I said Cena, but I spelled Cena wrong because there we go.
Big John Cena.
Seba he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for the way he let Bray Wyatt do what he had in his mind, but John Cena doesn't mind making himself look a bit silly, and I like that because without going on about this match too much, I think that if they could do that with Bray Wyatt and other people, and it could be absolutely tremendous. It could really be the making of the character. Now, I think that did so much to rebuild Bray Wyatt and the Fiend after the Goldberg debacle, and then they kind of got in their own way again then by putting him in a match with Braun. Where now, don't get me wrong, I think a feud with Braun could be really interesting. I think there's fantastic stories they could tell, things they could do, but don't do it for the title. Where you put yourself in this position where you've either got to put the title on the Bray again, or you've got to beat him again. And it's like that's the same thing they kept doing, with Bray before, is they would always have him kind of lose those big matches when it mattered, which is why people started to lose interest in what he was doing. But going back to the so we had the ladder match. Brian Cage wins. He came out. Did he come out last, or was it Orange Cassidy?
He came out last, yeah.
I thought it was really good match. There were some insane spots, as you'd expect. One person who I feel has turned the corner, mate. Sorry?
So mostly with Darby Allin nearly dying.
Yeah, the guy's insane, mate. Honestly, he scares me. One person who's turned the corner for me, and I've suddenly starting to get into them. I wasn't a massive fan, or I wasn't a massive fan. I think he's very talented, but I was finding it difficult to get into his character. Was Kip Sabian.
Right.
But these last few weeks, I've really connected a bit more with his character, and I feel like he impressed me in the match. And then again on TV this week, I enjoyed his stuff. I really enjoyed his little vignette with Jimmy Havoc as well.
I was about to say, is it because the addition of Jimmy, or what is it?
I liked they did a vignette before the match with Jimmy Havoc, and Jimmy Havoc had this like cool looking suit on, and he was just kind of like a background player for Kip Sabian with I've forgotten her name, Penelope Ford. And I just felt like they meshed together really well. And Jimmy Havoc is like automatically, even if you don't like his style and like that deathmatch style, or you don't like him as a character, he has got this thing where when he's on screen, you watch because you're interested. You don't quite know what he's going to do or say. And of course, because they're British, they slip some words in America, which you would never get in on UK TV. Yeah. But because the American TV companies seem to not know what these things mean, they just slip them in, which I always find entertaining. I am concerned with where they're going with Luchasaurus, because before the lockdown, he was so hot, and fans were really on board with the character, on board with him. And I thought like he could be a real superstar for him. And I don't get me wrong, I like the three of them together, Marco Stunt and Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, but I don't want Luchasaurus to be completely comedy, because I think he's quite a badass dude, and he's got like a badass finisher, and the fans like him. So I just want them to be careful with how they go about him. Of course, gone.
I mean, I wonder with him, Luchasaurus, like, is the appeal still there without the other two? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, maybe.
Jungle Boy and Marco. I mean, I'm not a huge Marco Stunt fan.
No.
I think if you take him out of that trio, then what is he? I mean, he's cool though. He works as a good dynamic with Luchasaurus, but I guess it's a bit like Rikishi back in the day with Too Cool, and it was like, Rikishi shouldn't be that silly, but he actually played it really well, where he would dance, but then he still had this mean side, and I guess Luchasaurus maybe just needs to explore that a bit more. But when he was getting hot, he was kind of like really the only big man in AEW. Now
he's not. It's
changed a lot, right? Wardlow is, people are like, oh, hang on, this guy's got something. Brody Lee's now there. Lance Archer's there. Like it's made a big change, and that might dilute the opportunities that Luchasaurus would have had. But don't and that's the other thing as well. You have to consider how much can you put into a dinosaur character. Is that going to be is it going to be a top champion? Is it going to? I mean, it could be. I'm just saying. Are there fans out there who will or won't buy it? I wonder if. Yeah, actually, I agree with what Gaz has got to say there. Like that could be a real coming out party for Jungle Boy at some point.
I think the dinosaur character. I think there's a way to do it without making it silly. If they ever did want to push him maybe to a sort of upper mid card singles run or whatever, maybe to potentially set up some type of heel turn and a Jungle Boy feud or whatever. There's a way to do it where you can kind of make it less about he's a dinosaur and more about he's like a luchador who's massive, and it's that kind of thing rather than it's I'm a dinosaur, where's my tail. So Mark just asked a question. He says, do you think that AEW should introduce a junior heavyweight title? Interesting one.
No. Just because to me, and I think the best way to phrase this, I mean, I felt like they could do with the title that they've got now, the TNT title, right? I felt like a mid-card title was something that they could do with. If you have things like it works in Japan, right? But that's kind of different. In WWE or WCW, like cruiserweight or light heavyweight basically equates to less than.
Yeah,
right?
Pigeonholes people, doesn't it?
It does, and if you win that title, it's still not considered the top title, right? Even though in like a UFC, a light heavyweight's as or more prestigious than heavyweight. The man makes the belt, John Jones. But in wrestling, it don't really work that way, in my experience, anyway. And I think while they were right to get another title, I think at one point, when you're looking at weight classes, that was something that was prevalent in wrestling, but I don't really think that's the case now. It's just world champion. It's not so much heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
But, that's just my thoughts.
So my thoughts, I agree with you in the junior heavyweight division. I don't think that they need to do that. However, what I would like to see to also make them different, I did put this up on Twitter briefly yesterday, is I would like to see a mid-card, or not a mid-card, but like an intercontinental or a US title or a TV title, but a tag team version, like a mid-card tag team, because they've got so many awesome tag teams.
Yeah.
That I would actually like to see them do something like that. I don't remember ever seeing a secondary tag title in anywhere in my 38 years of being, or 38 years of being alive, but like 30 odd years of watching wrestling. I don't remember any company having two sets of tag titles. And I think the amount of tag teams they've got, which is so good, I think that could be a really interesting twist and a different way to do it and to really showcase tag team wrestling, because the list is almost never ending of the tag teams they've got, especially after this this week they've added another.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I mean, I'm a big fan of like Best Friends, Private Party. I like them, and then you look at you stack them against SCU, Young Bucks, Lucha Bros, Revive. Sorry, beg your pardon, FTR. Man, that's a whole
Dark
list.
Order.
Yeah, Dark Order 2. Yeah, I think there's a lot, right? Like Kenny and Kenny and Page aren't even really technically a team, but here they are in a circle. Sorry, prior was it Proud and Powerful? Man, they've got teams for days, but you can only really have 2 or 3 in the title mix at one point. So there you have it.
Mark says the WCW did a US tag title. I did not know that, so I stand corrected. I don't remember that, but I did stop watching WCW after a certain point. So yeah. What next? We had the MJF with Wardlow versus the Jungle Boy. Obviously, MJF was going to win this, but I thought they did a good job of making Jungle Boy. They just keep showing what he can do and his potential. The sky's the limit for him if he makes the right decisions and keeps improving. I do think at some point he will have to start cutting promos. Not necessarily anytime soon, but if he's really going to push to be sort of like an Adam Cole level or a like a top star in whatever brand he's or company he's with, I don't know whether the silent gimmick will work, because he's like a silent gimmick can work if you're massive and a monster or a killer or even like a Jack Swagger who's massive and a legit MMA star. But when you're quite small, I think it's difficult to have a silent gimmick and then get over as a very, very top tier star, which I believe he's got the ability to do. He's got the look to do, but I just think to get over that final hurdle eventually, not necessarily anytime soon, but in the future, I think he'll need to work out something from a promo point of view.
I mean,
it's a good match though. This was, I got to say.
Yeah, it's clear that I was on the media conference after the show, and I spoke to Tony Khan. It's clear he's beaming at the prospect. He thinks those two are 2 of the young stars in the business with the highest upside, the highest potential, in the world. And he thinks that they're going to be generational talents for AEW. They are essentially the in-house stars that when Chris Jericho and people like that, the people that are dragging the cart along at the moment, once they're finished, these are the guys they're looking to break out and become their top stars. So, man, I like his work, Jungle Boy. I'm not like entirely sold that he's like a generational talent that some people make out. But yeah, we're talking about someone here who he's in the early embers of his career, still very young. His in-ring work is very good. He connects very well through that, which says something, considering he hasn't really spoken yet. I feel like being in the stable was a good grounding for young talent like that. So, he's going to come along and learn a lot and do that, and he doesn't have to be exposed in different ways too soon. So I think he's on the right path. I'd like him just to show more as we go, and then maybe he can be that guy. But to me, the more clear and obvious star is MJF.
Of course.
He is a guy who looks like he's going to be a top heel, and he'll run the business, man.
Yeah, MJF is not just the future of AEW, he's the future of wrestling if things go right and he makes the right decisions again. So Mark says silent gimmick initially worked for Kevin Nash, which is kind of what I said with you can get away with it. I think, Kevin Nash was massive. He's Shawn Michaels' bodyguard. He comes in as Diesel, and it's difficult with a smaller guy. But I also think that Jungle Boy has the potential to be as good as someone like an Adam Cole. But
yeah, he's not very big, but he is very charismatic. Is the difference. Yeah. He's an extremely good talker. I've interviewed Adam Cole. He's very, very good.
Gaz says, is it too early to tease Wardlow versus MJF? So obviously that's referring to the Battle Royal on AEW TV Wednesday. So you're skipping ahead, Gaz, but yeah. I think it is a little bit because there you are. There's a couple of kind of follow-up comments. Mark says Wardlow could be a massive star, and Gaz says he's got as much potential as MJF, which I kind of agree with. I think he has got a lot of potential. I think the big guys stick out in AEW a bit more than they do maybe on like a Raw or a SmackDown. because not everyone is massive.
No.
And I think Wardlow is really underrated for he's really good in the ring as well. He was really good in it. MLW, I really enjoyed his stuff. So, in my opinion, I think it's a little bit early, unless they're not going to churn MJF babyface. Let's face it. And then nor should they. And I don't think Wardlow now is a right fit for a babyface either.
No, I don't think he would elicit the reaction, that the breakup. I just don't, and they haven't really built enough equity either to make people care about that breakup. Like it needs a bit more time. Wardlow, I didn't really ever get to see him in MLW, but the cage match with Cody was his first one where I was like, whoa, okay, he can do a lot more than you. Don't judge a book by its cover, kind of thing. He was very athletic, and I've enjoyed his work since. So I would like to see him. I don't think I'd like to see them break until MJF's really at the top, if I'm honest.
But I want to care about the relationship. I want to care, when Wardlow finally has enough of him, I want to be rooting for Wardlow because MJF has been such a dick to him. And I feel like at the moment, I'm nowhere near that. At the moment, I kind of just look at them both and I think MJF is so good at being, for lack of a better term, a dick. And Wardlow is good as his bodyguard, but I don't really care about that relationship enough that if it breaks up, I'm going to really root for one or the other, if that makes sense. If anything, because I'm more familiar with MJF's work and I appreciate how good a heel he is, I would probably be more likely to root for him, which I think, I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but I kind of get the impression that that's how a lot of people would feel. They would kind of root for MJF, which means you might end up turning him babyface when the fans get back by default. And I think that would be a mistake.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all the money is in MJF as a heel at the moment, and he's extremely good at maintaining being a heel. Do you know what I mean? And that's actually hard in today's business where people want to root for the cool heel, and he is cool. On Twitter and the way he owns people, he's funny. People want to like him, but he is expertly good at being, as you would call it, a deck. So I don't know, man. For me, they need to do all they can to keep him in the chamber that way. But I honestly think within the next 12 months, he'll be the world champion of AEW. It just depends about the route they take to get there. Who's the hottest babyface that he can, rob it off?
See, I want to see him and Cody feud intermittently forever.
Yeah.
I want them to almost be like Rock and Austin, where next year or whenever, when Cody's at the top, maybe he's just about to get his first title shot since he said he's never going to challenge forever again. He somehow wins it back through this grueling tournament or something. And then just as he's about to get his title shot, MJF comes back or gets back involved with him and takes it off him or something after having no interaction for over a year. And just that, I really like their chemistry and their rivalry, and I think it could be really special for AEW. Okay, next was the TNT Championship, which was Cody and Lance Archer. I thought they were going to give it to Lance Archer. I got to say, I thought they were going to keep building Cody as the kind of nearly getting it and maybe have him chase Lance Archer for a bit and then give it to him when the fans were there. But I'm not, I wasn't angry that they gave it to Cody. I was just a little bit surprised. Good match though. Mike Tyson involved.
Yeah, it was a good match. For me, I feel like Cody had to win a big match because he done so much to put over Jericho and MJF, as we just mentioned, that he had to have a time. Because if you just keep beating someone, then it's worth as much when you come to beat them. There was a point, I remember Jericho in WWE where he was just putting people over for ages, pretty much prior to the Kevin Owens run. And it started to become he's a 6-7-time world champion, but what's that really worth now? Do you know what I mean? Because people were just running them over. So Cody needed that big win. He's a great name, with the lineage and stuff for the first champion on TNT. And Lance Archer, I don't think he was hurt in that defeat because the match was a banger. He looked great. When I said on Twitter that he was 43, people couldn't believe it. He moved fantastic, and I thought he did a great job. He doesn't lose much by that, and as long as you keep portraying him as a killer, he can stay in the mix and he can be the next champ. It's fine. But Cody did need that win, and I do honestly believe that Cody needs to end up in the world title picture at some point, because I still do think he's one of the best, and certainly when the crowds were here, hottest baby faces in the business. And really, AEW are cheating themselves by keeping him out of it. So to me, eventually that has to happen. Like you said, hopefully the stars align and it's in a program where MJF can actually steal in. But for me, I thought they did a great job of making everyone look good, making the title look important. Everyone came out a winner.
Yeah, I think they did a great job. And like you say, Lance Archer's, he's a monster. He's easy to keep going. They've got him over enough beforehand as well since he came in that the loss didn't hurt him too much. Jake helps as well. Mike Tyson.
That segment in Dynamite was trash. I'm just going to say it right now.
Thought it was terrible.
It was really.
All right, here's a question for you quickly on that. Did you see Henry Cejudo's video on, I think it was Instagram?
No.
He was backstage and he did like a story and he kind of filmed backstage, and Jericho and Mike Tyson and all the people who had been involved in the brawl were like all talking and laughing and joking. I was like, oh, mate. No one, like we all know that they get, they don't really hate each other and it's this and that. But
you don't want to see it. Like,
no, it just kind of like ruins it. And
I get it that Henry Cejudo probably doesn't understand that. Like, I get that concept's probably beyond him, but
someone should have smartened him up, shouldn't they?
Somebody should have said, yeah. I mean, that's the point, right? That you can maybe suspend your belief. But I know that Jericho and Tyson are like friends, and I realise there's no 10-year bad blood. I know this, but still, for the story that's been presented to me on TV, I don't want to watch a film where there's a good guy and a bad guy trying to kill each other for whatever reason, and then there's just like mid outtake of them just hanging out, before even the climax. I don't want to see that. So, I mean, I just thought the whole segment was terrible. Like the shoves, the callback to the Austin thing. Like, why would you do that? You're trying to present something totally new for what AEW is, and it's the alternative to WWE. That was a real WWE-esque segment.
I thought so.
I felt like AEW have done, they've done so well thus far by being fresh and letting the wrestling do the talking. That was, and I get it that they think that will get the mainstream attention, and Mike Tyson still is he is a buzz. I can tell you firsthand, he gets a lot of clicks for TalkSport even now. But man, the execution just wasn't great. Like the whole Mike Tyson's gang was weird, and like the act that he had, just with the face paint, like what the hell was that?
Yeah.
And the pull apart brawl, I mean, in isolation, that's not awful. It's just how they got there. Okay, Jericho is still entertaining. He still made me laugh a lot, like just his general little quips. But like I said on Twitter straight after I watched it, because I never want to really just cane something after I've watched it, because I think that might be rash. Because I've done that sometimes, and I think, maybe I regret saying that. So I thought I just put out a simple tweet, sort of saying, like, what did everyone think? And probably 85% said, yeah, it's trash. And I watched it again, and I thought, this is bad.
Yeah, I watched it a couple of times. Didn't like it. Felt very WWE like, and I didn't think it was executed very well. And I think it's difficult because if you're going to bring people in who are not in the wrestling business, whether it's MMA fighters or actors, they've got to be a certain way during the segments. they've got to treat it like it's real for it to work. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And I felt like some of the guys in it were kind of not taking it seriously, which, I understand why, but that harms it.
You know what's weird with Henry Cejudo as well is that, like, I know, and anyone who watches UFC, like, he's an Olympic gold medalist, two-weight champion. Like, he could tie us up in a pretzel in a heartbeat, right? He could literally demolish us.
Oh, yeah.
That didn't translate well to TV at all. He just looked like a short guy that was in there. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
and I'm not trying to be, like, heightist or anything. It's just
how being short.
Yeah, it is. It's just how it looked on TV, which is really unfortunate. Like, if you're going to have him come in there, maybe emphasize the fact that he is one of the best wrestlers on the planet today.
Yeah, show that he's a killer, even though he's small. But yeah, I didn't think it was great. So very quickly, like we talked about Stadium Stampede, we had the Chris Statlander Penelope Ford match. Probably, in my opinion, the weakest on the show. However,
it was, but it was the shortest. But in actual fact, they got, it wasn't like a bad match.
No.
It was just for what it was, just to make Chris Statlander advance her a bit further. And I thought Penelope Ford actually played her role pretty well.
I think she's improved a lot, Penelope Ford. And obviously, this was thrown together last minute because Britt Baker got injured on the Wednesday, so it wasn't necessarily planned. But it was all right. Don't really get the Chris Statlander gimmick. I would have preferred to see Penelope Ford go over because I feel like she's getting some momentum, so maybe a win. But I know, people like Chris Statlander.
I like her. I agree with you. Like,
gimmick's not hitting home for me.
Her gimmick is she's an alien.
But they just say she's an alien. They don't do anything.
That's it. What does that mean? Like, does she have superpowers? Is she... does she go to bed on a spaceship? Like, what the hell does that entail? What's the background? Like, they need to flesh out. And I thought they actually did it tremendously well with the Dark Order. I really enjoyed those vignettes.
Yeah, with that, I think those vignettes saved the Dark Order gimmick because it was
before that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like, Chris Statlander really needs a background because at the moment. Because she doesn't even, like the Fiend wrestles like the Fiend, like he's supernatural, like you can't. But she doesn't really do it. She is just a wrestler who thinks
he's an alien,
who's just saying that they're an alien. Like there's no added elements to her character that we know of. So
not even an entrance or something, or just something, or like
I would like that explored. I really would.
Yeah, I agree, especially because I think she's very talented. We had Dustin Rhodes versus Sean Spears again. Thrown together last minute, really. It was booked on the Wednesday before. It was a squash one.
You talk about the weakest on the card, it's probably actually that.
Yeah,
squash. It's meant to be just like a joke match, I guess.
Yeah. Then you had the Women's Championship match. Were you surprised they took the title off Nyla Rose?
I was. And going back to what you said earlier, I thought Lance Archer was going to win that match too. So these are two matches I got wrong. But at the same time, bearing in mind Shida was friends with Hana Kimura and there's just the tone and how it all changed, wasn't that surprised. I could see it coming a little bit after that happened, but I wouldn't have called it before that. And that takes nothing away from Shida. She's a great worker, and I thought the ladies put on a great match. Again, when you're in there with Nyla Rose, the match has got to be a certain amount of violence and physicality, and I thought they did really well to bring that. Shida was like the consummate babyface in the sense that she wouldn't give up. She took a lot of beatings in that match, right? But she just wouldn't give up. And old school wrestling storytelling sometimes can be like monotonous if you've watched wrestling long enough. But I was invested in that story.
Yeah, I agree. Nyla Rose has improved massively as well. Like I just said about Penelope Ford, I think 3-4 months ago, I really like Nyla Rose's promos or segments or matches. I just couldn't. I wasn't enjoying them. There was some really bad matches in there on TV. But I think something's clicked for her, and she's doing very, very well. And I was surprised. Like I get what you said about what maybe why they put the title on Shida, and I really enjoy Shida's work, but I was a little bit surprised because I was thinking they may build up Nyla Rose as a monster and keep up that, give her quite a long run until you find the right babyface to finally sort of topple her. Because I do feel the women's division has got better in AEW, but I do still feel like there's something not quite clicking the way
they don't have like a linchpin of the division, which is a problem. Like they don't have someone who they're building it around. So when they put Chris Jericho as the first AEW champion, it was a great decision, right? Because it's a guy that everyone knows and he can work with anyone, and anyone's greater for working with him. But they're still looking for the star, and all signs point to they probably think it's Britt Baker, but like obviously that's taking a bit of time to arrive at. And then you have to factor in as well that Kenny Omega, I was about to say has a bias, but that's probably the wrong word. But he obviously loves the Joshi wrestlers. Like he has an affinity for them. And I like them. Like, like I said, she does great work. Riho is great. I think Yuka Sakazaki is amazing. I love her charisma. So like, I get it, but I feel like they should have had maybe like a foundation and worked from there, and then built the rest up like around it. There's several women in WWE right now who could go there and do that role. Like WWE, and I mean this extending to NXT as well, have got the vast majority of the best women wrestlers in the world. I know there's several in Japan as well.
Outside of Impact, I would agree with you. I think Impact's female roster is just insane.
Yeah, it is. And Deonna Purrazzo is a fantastic addition that NXT.
Oh, yeah.
I love that her video immediately addressed that she is a fantastic technical wrestler, and that should be the crux of her character. Because in NXT, for some obscure reason, it was just lost, and I don't know why. But my point is that AEW should focus on their next big signee should have been like a Deonna Purrazzo, or maybe like when Tessa Blanchard becomes available, which is supposed to be this year. They need to focus on landing that big talent they can build a division around. And I'm not saying they don't have the big talents. Like Britt Baker is a big talent, and like you said, Nyla Rose has come on. It just feels like maybe they need one other to work with to really kick it into high gear. And along with that, they need to give it the right time, because I think a lot of people are feeling AEW are still putting together their women's division. They haven't, they're not always showcasing them the way that everyone would like.
Yeah, I think they might be missing like a really top baby face to kind of build it, because I think Britt Baker has come along so well as like that heel that you could, if you get the right baby face to put against her at the top of the card, I think that could be good. But they haven't maybe got it. I think they need to get that one star almost just to click it all into place. It's got better, but it's still something just off. Obviously, we talked about the Moxley Brody Lee match towards the start with the Stadium Stampede. That paradigm shift through the walkway was insane. Great match. Brody, like I say, I would have preferred not to see Brody lose so early on after coming in, but I think it was the right decision to not take the title off Moxley, so you can kind of go with it.
I think it was great that we saw Brody Lee versus John Moxley as opposed to Luke Harper versus Dean Ambrose.
Yes.
You know what I'm trying to say with that?
Oh, yeah.
They put on the match that those characters, and you could tell that they had the freedom within their work, and they made it brutal, they made it violent, they made it hard-hitting, they made it look like the stakes were high. And that's what I enjoyed out of that match.
Yes, this is what you wanted whenever you would have heard Luke Harper versus Dean Ambrose or John Moxley versus Brody Lee. This is the type of match you'd have expected and wanted, and we never really got that to this point. So it was nice that they get.
Like while we're on that, there's a problem sometimes in WWE where. So, for instance, I remember when Daniel Bryan made his comeback, and the night after that WrestleMania, they had him and AJ Styles. And I remember I was on no, not the night after, it was a Tuesday, on SmackDown. And I was flying back, so I actually missed it. I was fuming when I got on the plane and someone said to me, "Oh, Styles Bryan." I was, "Oh, man." But then in the back of your mind, you just know, like, they're not going to do a proper match. That's a habit WWE have. Like, they'll put people together and you think, oh man, I can't wait to see these guys just wrestle for like 20 minutes or 25 minutes. But then there'll be some shenanigans or yeah, I'll tell you what another great example is Sami Zayn and Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. And they could have had an absolute clinic for 20, 25 minutes. But instead, because Sami Zayn's character is this played out cowardly heel, that dictates the way the match goes. And unfortunately, then you have to spend the match just Sami Zayn running away from Daniel Bryan and trying to cheat him rather than two amazing wrestlers trying to beat each other. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's to me where AEW succeeds. That we got Brody Lee and we got Jon Moxley, high stakes, and they just went at it. Sometimes I want to see that.
Yeah, and I think another problem which maybe WWE has had at points is when they finally put those dream matches together, they haven't always been able to capture what people are expecting. So like you had AJ Styles and Nakamura, we never quite got.
Sorry, my child has just made a run in.
Aye.
Hello, but yeah, there's a big smile. I'm gonna have to migrate downstairs. Keep talking.
Yeah, so yeah, I just think that when they've had those dream combinations, maybe that people will get behind, they just haven't quite produced that big match, and it's a shame because they're capable.
I have a bar for you, good girl. Yeah, no, they are definitely are, and that's the thing. Like you said, for both promotions. Sometimes it's just leading with your best foot forward, and I feel like AEW have done a better job of that when it comes to the big matches and making sure that they feel important. Sometimes I would just like WWE to deliver that, like just give me the match that I want to see, rather than the layered. Or when you build to something, just give it the time.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? And
you don't want a character like the cowardly heel to weigh down someone like Sami Zayn, like that, or build it to a point where that he has to, show what he can do in the ring. Because that's another thing in WWE. Like the heels are sometimes layered with these characters, or often scrupulous, and you look at a Baron Corbin or whoever who just want to cheat to win. That's fine. That's what heels do. But like Triple H was in a Turn of the Millennium a smart heel. He was a heel that was his character still was, but I am the best wrestler. So it's like, you can't just rely on these old things. Like heels can be good wrestlers too.
Yeah.
Like why can't you just have a straight up wrestling match? And they can cheat within that match, but this whole cowardly stuff and man, sometimes it drives me mad because some of these favorite wrestlers I just want to see go at it.
Yeah, and do you know what drives me insane is all the baby faces have to be like, oh, I'm so happy to be here, and I've worked so hard to get here, and it gets like tiresome. Like, let's have like some different personalities, whether they're heel or babyface. And like before the lockdown, I really liked Kevin Owens' character when he was feuding with Seth Rollins. He didn't keep getting jumped. Like he kept knowing that he was going to get jumped.
Yeah.
So he was kind of outsmarting the heels because he just wasn't having stupid babyface syndrome, where even though we've seen it for 30 years of like being babyfaces being tricked into ending up being beaten down, he was getting around it in an entertaining way. And I just want to see different characters do different things. And on the subject of characters, big rumors that Mr. Riddle is going to SmackDown very soon, maybe as soon as tonight, which would be interesting. I'm very happy that he's going there, but I am worried about what we will see in terms of his character and portrayal, especially after the way they kind of didn't do him justice in the Rumble, and maybe to a lesser extent in the Survivor Series angle. They kind of focus more on Keith Lee, which is fine. But like Matt Riddle's a legit badass. He's built like unbelievably. He is a stallion, as he would say. Yeah. So let's see him do that.
Charisma. I'm a huge Matt Riddle fan. Really big believer in Matt Riddle. And I'm the same as you. But it's not just Matt Riddle. I worry for every NXT expert that Vince McMahon gets his hands on. And the thing that makes it worse for Matt Riddle. He said recently that he's had a meeting with Vince McMahon and all of these things, but I feel like Triple H and Shawn Michaels, and this is my discussions with Triple H and Shawn Michaels and Matt Riddle, they're guys that have really looked out for him and understood him, and you take him away from them, it might not work so well. So for me, he's a guy, if he goes up to the main roster, he needs to be in top angles and quick. We saw with Velveteen Dream and other people that he worked with in NXT, he can put on some killer matches, man. Just like, you just got to let him do it. I thought the cage fight with Tim Thatcher was fantastic as well. So there is a major, major star there who's got a legit background. He's got a character like no one else. You could say he's like a modern version of RVD, I guess. But, he's cooler, isn't he? And he's bigger and he's more intimidating. And
the man left the UFC on a 4-fight win streak. Not many guys do that.
No.
And like, I don't know. I just think, like I said to Andrew in the run-up to Survivor Series last year, they should have been building to Goldberg versus Matt Riddle. And then they should have been having Riddle put Lesnar out of the Royal Rumble. And then they should have had Lesnar versus Riddle at Mania. Before the lockdown, this was obviously. And they could have cemented Riddle as absolute top-tier talent and a legit badass at the same time. They could have then Lesnar could have gone off and done his couple of months off, and whenever he comes back, you've got that hot feud to go back to. I saw people say, "Oh, Goldberg wouldn't work with him." Goldberg will work with him if he gets paid the money. They pay him enough to go to Saudi Arabia and whatever. I'm pretty sure he would do it. And Lesnar will work. People criticize Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar likes wrestling. He doesn't like to travel. If you pay him, and they do, he will do whatever they ask him to do within reason.
No, I mean, this is it. Look.
Oh, there you are. There's a comment. Should be the next Lesnar. Will probably be the next or RVD too.
Yeah, it's not a bad comment. I mean, if Vince has his way, who knows? But I mean, for me, he should be retiring Goldberg. That should be. I mean, I don't want to see Goldberg wrestle anymore. Anyway, it's very important to me just watching him attempt to do the 2 moves that he can do.
After he killed Bray Wyatt, mate, that was me done.
Just rubbish. Honestly, I don't know who enjoys that in this day and age. I mean, if you do, you do them, but not for me. When I look at that, I want Riddle to, get an emphatic victory over him, retire him, like convincingly retire him. And then you move on to the Brock feud. Like, I don't know. He keeps saying he wants to retire Brock, but I think Brock's got some years in him yet. But what you can do is build to that. Like, they can have something where, they exchange a few victories, and it can be like a long simmering feud. And then a few years down the line, Riddle just finally wants to get rid of him, and then does retire. I honestly would strap a rocket that hard to Matt Riddle. I honestly do. As much as anyone in the company, he is their next biggest star. It's just, are they going to do that? Yeah, like you said, money is a factor. Brock did have words with him at Royal Rumble. I know that for a fact. But I disagree with the assertion he wouldn't work with him.
Yeah, me too.
Brock Lesnar likes money.
And Paul Heyman likes Riddle as well.
Yeah, it's just a case that Riddle has to humble himself a little bit. And I do think, I understand how Riddle has had a go at Goldberg and Lesnar in the past. I'm 100% behind what you're saying about Goldberg, but I do kind of disagree with Lesnar now. There's at one point I would have probably agreed with him, but now I think a lot of people have had new appreciation for Lesnar over the past year.
Yeah. But I think one of the things he said about Lesnar was not necessarily that, criticizing him. It was more that he can do more, and he knows that he's capable of doing so much more, and he feels like he should.
He did a lot.
Yeah.
So when he wants to, and he's motivated to, he will. And regardless of the match he put on with Drew at WrestleMania, I mean, I hate a finisher fest that's short and sharp. But the build to that, he made Drew look like a major star. Nobody can say he didn't.
No, he didn't. He was exceptional. So just to finish off, I completely agree with you, by the way, about Riddle. They should absolutely put the rocket pack on him, and they should do everything they can, and they should going by you if Lesnar's not going to retire anytime soon, like for a few years, what you do is you have Riddle beat him initially. After beating Goldberg, you have him beat Lesnar, even if it's like a roll up or something. You have him beat Lesnar after a brutal match. Then you can have them exchange kind of victories, whether it's a Survivor Series match, so it's not a one-on-one, or like Lesnar gets him out at the Rumble, and you can utilize other match types without having them just constantly face each other one-on-one, so it gets boring, and build and simmer it to the retirement match. What does Mark says? Should they wait for the fans to return to move Riddle up? So my last question to Alex was going to be, do we see Matt Riddle tonight? And Mark says, should they wait for the fans to return?
Well, I think if we don't see him tonight, it's in the next couple of weeks. And I don't know what feud they're going to insert him into or anything like that. But yeah, it would have been better with fans. I mean, it's still going to be kind of cool because they're going to have some NXT people around ringside, so there'll be some ambience. It certainly would have been a bigger deal. But now that they've done what they've done in NXT, they've taken him out the banner, and he's had a like a rubber loss, as it were, to Thatcher. I think to hold him off any longer wouldn't make sense, and I don't think we'll have fans back till the tail end of this year. I know Vince is desperate for SummerSlam. I don't see it, mate. I can't see that. So I think you'll be lucky if maybe by Survivor Series fans are back. So hopefully there'll be big moments for him then. But people can still get over, and I feel like Riddle's been doing really well in NXT, just showcasing his personality. So let's hope that that's what continues to happen. I just hope and pray Vince has big plans for him.
So, yeah, I tend to agree. I just so I wonder whether, I was just looking at the Intercontinental semi-final is Styles versus Elias and Jeff Hardy versus Daniel Bryan.
Styles and Bryan all day long, that final, isn't it?
Yeah, I would think so. Unless they're gonna do Styles versus Jeff Hardy, which could be interesting.
But yeah.
So I was looking. The reason I was looking is because I thought, well, if they have Baron Corbin win the tournament, which I wouldn't have put past them before he went out, I could see them have him win the title and then have Matt Riddle come out and kind of go down that route to challenge Corbin, which wouldn't be a terrible feud for him to start with, because he needs to win. He could win the Intercontinental title straight away. Whatever they do with him, it's got to be good and it's got to be big. They've got to instantly make him on the level of the biggest stars on SmackDown.
Yeah.
And when you look at the biggest stars on SmackDown, your Daniel Bryans, your AJ Styles, I think they understand that as well. So you'd like to think that those guys who've got a bit of sway and a bit of, like, they listen to what they say in terms of guys. Like, you only got to look at the way they've been with Drew Gulak, and you think Daniel Bryan's probably had something to do with that.
He definitely has.
Yeah. So it'd be nice if those same guys can kind of say, right, we've got something special, so let's make it special.
Yeah.
Be interesting. I think he'll be on tonight. I do. That's because the one advantage of lockdown is that spoilers for tapings are not getting out because no one knows, because there's no one there.
Yeah.
Which is difficult, but we'll see. So thank you for joining me, my friend. It's always a pleasure.
Anytime,
I always enjoy it. So tell the people your show is Sunday. Is it back to Sunday now?
It is Sunday, and it's 9 to 11. I had to think for myself.
Ooh, 2 hours. It's going to be going 3 hours soon, like Raw.
Well, yeah. God, I hope not. So we've been expanded to 2 hours recently, which is cool. The show's doing really well. TalkSPORT 2, Talk Wrestling, 9 to 11. We have guests every single week, and this week I spoke to Apollo Crews, so he's on the show. We've got some different guests, all around the wrestling industry. Jonathan Snowden, who I mentioned earlier, has just done Ken Shamrock's book, so you want to find out a little bit about that, you can on Sunday. And we've got Adam Maxted. We're doing a new feature where it's like UK wrestler profiles, and just getting to know people around the indie scene. Of course, he was on Love Island for those who are into that, but he also has wrestled in World of Sport, ICW. He's done various stuff, so there's a lot more to the man than Love Island. So I encourage people to tune in and listen to that. So yeah, I mean, that's just this week, but every week we've got stuff going on. And if you're into the interviews and the stuff that I've been doing, then you can see my handle below my name now for Twitter, and you'll find that stuff there every week.
Indeed, some real good stuff. It's a really good show. And unfortunately, I don't get to listen live because I record my MMA and boxing show. However, this Sunday, I'm doing a live show at 6 o'clock with Danny Batten, former Cage Warriors champion, obviously. But also, we have a special guest analyst, Mr. Jack Shaw, UFC hot prospect. Be a champion before you know it, let me tell you. So we've got another UFC star coming on, which I'm very happy about. He's going to help us break down Saturday's UFC card and some other stuff. And then Monday evening, the Andy Campbell show, 7:30, like every week. The guest, Cardiff City chairman, Mr. Mehmet Dalman. Oh, it's going to be interesting. Subscribe, youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation. And remember what we said at the start of the show. Think before you tweet. Hashtag don't be a dick. Cheers, mate.
Oh, silence.